Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teachings of the Ascended Masters on Fallen Angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. I'm Stephen Macchio.
And I'm Joseph Macchio.
And this is episode 4. Now, in episode 3, we had left off with explaining the image of the divine Son and that Lucifer rebelled against this image, the image of the divine Son.
Yes.
And that Lucifer was involved in the creation or helping the evolution to evolve to a higher state.
Yes.
And that he worked with the Kumaras, and he served those people that were evolving on the earth at the time.
Yes.
And he was in service at the time that he was with the Kumaras.
Yes.
Of serving those created in the divine image.
Yes.
Right? So we're going to take the story from there and continue forward as to what would now be the motive of Lucifer for ultimately rebelling against this creation that is impressed upon it with the divine image. And as an angel, he was serving that image.
Yes.
But now he's in a state of rebellion, all due to the influence of Peshualga. And we can now talk about Lucifer's motive.
And of course, his motive, being influenced by Peshualga, was that he will not serve the Son of God. The Son of God is the archetypal man that we have in ourselves, and that the universal Son of God, the universal mind that was in man, created in the divine image, he is not serving. But I'd like to quote Elizabeth Clare Prophet, speaking of the motive and method of Lucifer. She states here, in the hierarchy of the kingdom of God, the angels occupy a position of ministering servants to the sons of God. You might say that Lucifer became jealous that the Lord God did not require that the creation worship him, for he had been with God in the very creation of his offspring. I see Lucifer's pride and egocentrism, the marks of his fall, as an intellectual rationale that is devoid of God in the center, an attitude of self-sufficiency that claims, I don't need God because I can do better than God. Unquote.
So it's coming back to pride and rebelling.
Yes, pride and rebellion. Mm-hmm. The feeling of separation, the feeling of competition. Mm-hmm. But we'd like to pick it up from another source, and we're now going to go into the book of Revelation.
Okay.
I'm reading from Revelation 12, verses 2, 3, and 4. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, and its tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth.
Now, is this historical or is it allegorical?
Very good question.
Or is it both? Because you know how Revelation is. Revelation is a very cryptic language.
Yeah,
When you read it, when I used to first start reading this,
Yeah.
I make heads or tails out of it.
Yeah.
You don't understand the words. And it was probably done like that on purpose. Because it's not an easy thing, but thank God that the Ascended Masters use their messages for purposes like this. Unless you have access to the Akashic records to reveal what it's meant here, or the aegis of the Holy Spirit to understand the hidden meanings in this kind of a language.
Yeah.
So what do you think? It's historical, allegorical?
Well, according to the masters, it's actually both.
It is both.
Believe it or not. Yeah, it is actually both. Good that you picked that up.
I threw it out there.
Okay, I mentioned the stars. Notice this now. A third part of the stars of heaven. Well, who are the stars? Well, we're looking at the mystery language of Revelation. These are actually angels. So Lucifer now has become a, quote, angry dragon. But notice, a wonder in heaven. It didn't say on earth. So the wonder is in heaven, meaning some level of etheric matter higher than this physical matter that they were dwelling in. And of course, the color red does symbolize anger. If you or I get angry, you will see in the aura, for those who can read the aura, streaks of red in the auric field. That is the thought form or the color of anger. Fire engine, red. Well, what is the tail? It also says tail. Well, according to the masters, it's his misuse of divine energy. It says his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. His misuse of energy, his, let's say, glamour, swagger,
Right.
intellectualism,
Yes. Right. Right.
like we saw with General Palpatine.
Right.
You might even say it's a serpentine, slithering type of.
Yeah,
We'll
so
get into that, though.
Once
We're not-
again, we come to the misuse of the energy that he has.
Yeah,
And you can do anything that you want with it. It's given to
Yeah.
you freely, and when it enters for use of the individual,
Yeah.
whether you're an angel or man evolving,
yeah,
you have a choice to use it either way you want.
yeah.
And that's all. That's what free will is all about.
And of course, he has a tremendous amount of energy, a tremendous amount.
Right.
You might even say it's misuse of the light of the Divine Mother, which would be the white
Would
ray.
be the base.
Yeah, would
What
be
in India known as the
in
base
India.
chakra, the Kundalini. It's referred to,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's a very powerful energy.
and it's a misuse of that.
Right. So we also have the angels who serve under him,
Yeah,
and they're going to follow their leader.
yeah,
It's very similar to what you have in the earth here. And like in any kind of a situation in the armed forces, you have generals, you have leaders,
yeah,
and there's, so to speak, rank and file that you are trained to follow that leader. It's very similar in the heaven world, especially when you're dealing with the warrior class of angels, and so you have, they're drawn also into this momentum,
yes,
aren't they?
Yes, they're completely drawn into it. But the karmic consequence is that they eventually have to be cast into matter, into either this earth or the matter of other planets, into actual physical incarnation.
Right. Right. I just want to reiterate that because it's amazing.
We have
And this is cosmic law, meaning the law itself is indifferent. No one makes a choice to say, well, because you do this, I'm going to do this to you. It's more of a cosmic law that when an angel rebels to this extent, the law acts and you are forced into what we're terming the matter spheres,
Yes, the matter spheres. Yes.
which is different from the heaven world that they were in.
Yes, exactly. The matter spheres. Well, the other interesting thing that we see from this is a third part of the stars of heaven. Well, how much is a third? Well, it could be millions.
It could be millions. It could be tens of millions.
It could be tens of millions.
Right. They're not revealing how many angels were in that sector of the universe or the galaxy at that time.
Yeah.
There's some things that the Ascended Masters just don't reveal, but we know that it's easily millions.
Yeah. But then, of course, we are now faced with the prospect, because it says right here, cast into the earth, of millions of fallen angels, extremely angry ones on earth. Mm-hmm. That's the logical conclusion from this verse.
Right.
So I'm wondering, do we wonder where all the anger in the world comes from?
Because these people are embodied. These
They're-
angels
well,
are
they have
embodied.
been. Now, this is
and
millions
have
of years ago.
Right.
But again, we're looking at the law of reincarnation, and the law of reincarnation goes on and on and on unless you actually make a change in your consciousness, which I understand very few of the fallen angels did, although there were some that are called, quote, the restored angels that did go through a restoration and the so-called forgiveness. But we'll look at the anger in the world, produced, directed, staged, bought and paid for by these same individuals that we're we're talking about.
Right, because they're forced into this situation
They're forced.
as a
And
as
if
a
you're
process.
anybody that's forced into anything, you're angry about it. If someone
Even though it's
forces you
because
to
of
do
their
something-
own rebellion,
Yeah.
they're not going to all of a sudden just say, but what I was right. That's that whole momentum.
Yeah.
And after you get used to that, living with that
Yeah.
you were wronged. There's no way that you should have been kicked out of heaven.
Yeah.
Why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
And this momentum
I just
builds.
followed my leader.
Right, right. Why should I be to blame?
Yeah.
Right. You could.
It's the psychology.
Right. And the intellectualism that goes along with it, the intellectualism that goes
Yeah.
along with it is amazing. To they have to ratify in themselves why they're in the situation they're in.
Yeah.
It's a bad situation.
But a lot of people who aren't fallen angels fall for it.
So
Well, let's backtrack a little.
okay, where are you going to go now?
Well, it says here, if I don't have a script, I'm lost. Okay, did Lucifer himself draw the angels of his own will, or did the angels actually want to come to earth? The answer is, we already discussed it. They didn't. So Lucifer said, I will not serve the divine mind within man. I will not serve the Son of God within man, because I was instrumental in bestowing that mind within man. I helped to evolve man. Why should I serve him? And we discussed this. So knowing that the karmic consequence was being cast into incarnation on earth and other planets, Lucifer and his cohorts decided to rebel and what? Make war against God, the cosmic beings, and his own hierarchy, and the entire spiritual hierarchy to boot.
Okay, so this is where the idea of the war comes in,
Yes.
and the famous quote. I think we're going to get to that now, right? From
Yeah,
the Book of
we're
Revelation,
gonna
that a
get to
lot
that.
of people are
Yeah.
very familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go there now.
Okay. This is from the Jerusalem Bible Translation. Quote, Revelation 12, 7-9. And now war broke out in heaven when Michael and his angels, Michael the archangel now, who did not fall, attacked the dragon. The dragon fought back with his angels, but they were defeated and driven out of heaven. The great dragon, the primeval serpent, known as the devil or Satan, who had deceived all the world, was hurled down to the earth, and his angels were hurled down with him. Now remember, heaven, Stephen, means the higher worlds or higher planes of matter. Really very, very high.
Right. And for very brief explanation of that, we're just talking about matter vibrating at a higher frequency, closer to the speed of light. And I'm sure that there are possibilities that things can move beyond the speed of light. That's speculative
Sure.
in our dimension. But
Yeah.
it's about the electron, the spin of the electron, and the electron moving around the atom, which determines, different levels
density.
of matter. Yeah, like the density or right.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's more dense or less dense.
Yeah.
So, and that's the Ascended Masters do talk about that.
Yes.
And so that's what we're talking about, that as that frequency is raised, you're in the matter spheres, but you're at a higher level because everything is vibrating at a much more intense rate.
And completely would be basically invisible to us here functioning in this physical
Yes,
realm.
right. And that
But
has
it's just as real in its own realm and just as solid.
yes, and there's no breakdown. So in the heaven world, you don't have any kind of a decay rate. You just have acceleration.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with the polarities, that if you're in the same polarity as that heaven world, then that's why it's unseen. If the polarities change, then you would be able to see into the heaven world. But we're not going to, we want to stick with our story here.
Yep.
So let's continue with the dragon. We just said that we're just trying to explain heaven and the higher planes of matter.
Well, we're seeing a great cosmic battle.
Right.
It's obvious. Star wars, angel wars. We've seen millions of billions of fallen angels on Earth and in other planets. And we know they couldn't not remain in heaven. And Archangel Michael is the agent of this war. He actually has armor. And he still has armor to this very day. He was the one that led the battle against Lucifer and the fallen angels. Now, they didn't want to come into bodies like man. They didn't want to have bodies like man. They detested man at this point. So they had to be forced out of heaven by Michael and his angels. And they also did not want to expiate their karma.
Right. Now, this is an important point here, what you just said, because
Okay.
now the free will of the angel changes to whatever mistakes they make, they create karmic debt that has to be paid off. See, now prior
Good
to
point.
that, right?
Mhm,
Prior
yeah.
to that, we were talking about that the free will of angel is just to carry out the commands of those who they're serving under.
Yes.
But once they're forced into embodiment, all bets are off.
Right.
And you are now responsible for every misuse of energy that you create. And now you're in a whole different world for them.
But they don't want anything to do with that.
No, of course not.
They don't want to expiate the karma because that means surrendering. That means obeisance. That means, well, to balance karma, I have to serve man.
Right.
Well, you just rebelled against man.
And
You
accountability.
just rebelled against the Christ in man.
Right.
So I don't want to be accountable. So I have to come up with all kinds of ways to skirt around the accountability factor. I have to make up philosophies. I have to make up all kinds of things. And of course, hide the fact that I actually was cast out.
Right. Well, if you were them and you're coming here,
Yeah, I'm coming. in.
why would you want anyone to know
would-
that you were cast out?
I wouldn't want
Well,
anybody.
you're going to have to
I would-
embody. You're going to have to
I
change.
would
it.
hide it.
You got to hide it.
I got to hide it.
Because people know that the fallen angel is in a physical body,
Yeah.
and they possibly can be recognized by the things they do. They're in trouble.
They're in trouble, in a heap of trouble.
So how do you think they go about hiding this fact?
That's a good question. I got to think about that one.
Well, just look at your notes. It's there somewhere.
Yeah, I know it's somewhere here. Wait, maybe it's on the other page. No. Well, okay. This is interesting. Again, they refused to admit that they were once cast out. They also didn't want to admit that there was a record through all of their embodiments of probably infamy. And although some of them had some good embodiments, so this was one of the reasons why they denied the pre-existence of the soul and they denied reincarnation to cover up their past. When they got into, for instance, the Christian church, let's say, well, we will be getting into that
Yeah.
again. But you have to understand the psychology. I was cast out. I hate the Christ, the Son of God in man. I don't want anything to do with my pre-existence because it's a bad, bad record. I have to save face. So there's no reincarnation. There's no pre-existence of the soul. Bingo, the soul just comes poof with the body. When the body is created in the normal, natural manner, bingo, a soul is put into it. See, there's no past.
Right.
That's their doctrine.
Right. So you have God or whoever you want to believe is creating those souls subservient to man during a procreation process. Because if he didn't create souls before and there's procreation, he has to go, oh, well, I got to get me a soul and send him
right.
down because, so who's in charge of who? See, it doesn't make any logical
No.
sense
Yeah,
that
yeah.
man can demand
Yeah.
or like on demand, I want a soul now because I have a child here. You better do something about it.
You're right. You better give
So-
me a soul.
So it's a brilliant tactic.
It is brilliant.
It's intellectualism
Yeah.
at its height
Yeah.
to infiltrate the whole planet.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the Christian world, but we are infiltrating in a lot of areas to deny the pre-existence of the soul. I mean,
Yeah, and this is especially true in Western
Right.
theology, you know, all the way from the, let's say, 3rd century. And that's a whole nother story about how, what they did with theology. So
right.
they could not admit that they had so fallen.
And they went to the point, I believe, that if you tried to bring up the idea of pre-existence of the soul
Yeah.
or reincarnation, it was heretical, which is a very, very serious matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You've committed heresy.
You committed
You
heresy.
can't speak about it at all.
Yeah.
So you just better be quiet,
Yeah.
you know. So it's a brilliant thing. They cover up their records. They cover up their past, and basically, they're trying to cover up the idea of evil angelic incarnations.
Exactly.
That's the bottom
I
line.
remember one of the church fathers, Augustine, said, I could not in any way agree to the physicality or to angels coming into bodies. He said that. And so did Jerome.
The church fathers.
Yeah, Augustine and Jerome. They were absolutely dead set against any talk, not only of pre-existence. So I'll just throw that out to
Interesting.
you to see, you know, they did this as, the fallen angels get into positions of authority, especially in religion, but we will then be speaking about their authority in other realms besides religion, but popes and church fathers, if I can only get in there, reincarnate in there and deny everything, I got it made. I could stop the people of light from making any spiritual progress.
Okay.
So let's go on. We now also look at the term devil in English, D-E-V-I-L, and it comes from the Greek diabolos, meaning accuser or slanderer.
That was never taught to me when I went to cataclysm of the things devil was.
Wasn't
we went back to and I think we talked about it in episode 1 about
Yeah,
he's a bad guy with a long tail, pitchfork, and horns.
with a pitchfork.
Yeah.
He's down there
Yeah, he's down
forever.
here. Right. And as long as I don't listen to him, I'm okay
Yeah,
because he just whispers.
yeah, he whispers.
All right. So
That's
now
it. But
you.
tell us what the Ascended Masters have said about the word devil.
The word devil. All right.
in
So
English.
So yeah, even though it comes from what you just said, accuser or slanderer, which is very important,
Yeah,
the Ascended Masters take the word devil, and its meaning DE stands for deified, and evil is energy veil. So one who deifies the energy veil, someone who glorifies the energy veil. And the energy veil is the E veil, a veil of energy that clouds the individual from realizing that there really is no duality. But when the energy veil sets up around an individual, then you see yourself as an individual, separate, and don't need the hierarchy of any other beings that exist in heaven, that you and of yourself can take care of yourself. That your God starts to become the ego that you create. Because now
Yes.
the ego is deified.
okay.
So you have deifying the energy veil, which is actually the ego, and you start moving into a humanistic concept that the highest order on the planet is humans.
Fascinating.
interesting-
No, this is
very
a real,
interesting-
very, very important
Right.
point.
And that
about
I
the
don't need to go
the-
any higher than that because it's all in my mind. And
Yeah.
I can intellectualize anything. I could do anything I want because humans, that's what they do. They solve problems.
at the human level,
Yeah,
the level of
intellectualism.
ego,
Yes.
which you might say Lucifer even started to have it even before he was introduced, because some of them were competitive, and the ego starts, I guess, would
Yes.
you agree that
Yeah,
the
I would-
minute of when you entertain a sense of separation
Right.
from God or the one supreme being and the one
And
supreme
whatever that is to you. Right.
consciousness.
Right. Whatever that is to you, whether that's Brahman,
But the energy
whether,
veil, right, whether it's Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, whatever name you give to it, but the energy veil, is this an actual veil? I mean, is it the veil of confusion? Is it a physical? veil?
it creates a Mayic view of the world, and
Okay.
you're kind of clogged, cut off, almost like
Yeah.
if you were in a thick smoke and you can't see clearly anymore. You're in a thick set of clouds where
Yeah.
you look around and you don't really see anything else. You know you're there, but And so you have to get through it because there's no one else out there to help you. It's all about you.
A dense fog,
Yeah,
like
and
a
you can
dense fog.
yeah, and you can see the ego just building, saying, you can do it. You have the intelligence, and there is human intelligence, but
Right.
there's that fine line again between the use of the higher mind and the use of the humanistic intellectualism
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
so prevalent
Yeah.
today.
And you can't make the ascension with the human ego mind.
No,
You must surrender and transcend it. Right?
right, and
I
you're
mean, that's what-
transcending back to what you originally were in the first place.
Yes.
So it's an important point, but let's continue
Thanks
with
for
our
bringing that out
story.
because that's important.
So now
we
you're
have
saying
another-
accuser, slanderer.
Slander, that's the word devil. If you
Right.
go back to the Greek, which the Book of Revelation was written in Greek. That's what we have the Greek copy. We have no other copy that's not in Greek. Now the term Satan or Satan means simply adversary in Hebrew. It's not a proper name. It's just adversary. But then we have another character here. I know he's here somewhere. Here we go. The primeval serpent. We had mentioned in that passage from the book of Revelation, the primeval serpent. Well, I'm just wondering now. Primeval serpent, could he be Pesho Alga and his entire entourage?
It's very
because he
possible.
must have got a lot of individuals to back him.
Right,
It could be thousands, millions. I mean, that could be the primeval serpent.
right, because he was the one that
serpent is the serpent mind is like what we saw General Palpatine do. That's the serpentine logic that convinces Anakin.
right. It could reason out of anything. With the serpentine mind done the right way,
Yeah.
you can reason God out of existence.
Yes, you can.
Very,
And many
very
have
easy.
done that already.
Oh,
Great
sure.
philosophers.
Yeah.
Tremendous philosophers. Well, the dragon and the primeval serpent, I'm just wondering now. It could be maybe a symbolic conglomerate of, I guess, extraterrestrial rebels in the millions.
Yes,
That doesn't necessarily mean they're in spacecraft. I'm
and
just saying,
those who follow Peshualga and Lucifer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that primeval serpent, could relate to the evil one of unknown origin.
Oh, we're getting into really interesting territory here. And you're capitalizing that.
Yes. E for evil, capitalized E and capitalized O. Now that's a very specific term that is used.
And it's used by the masters.
Yes.
Capital E, capital O, evil one. Sometimes that word I've seen the masters use it and the messengers use it to relate to Lucifer, but other times it does not relate specifically to him. So who could this evil one be? I mean, where would he come from?
Or it could relate
Where-
to
what-
a vortex of darkness that already existed. That because remember in the story of Peshualga, he went back to darkness
right,
that
that's
already
right.
existed.
He did go back.
So the evil one must have his own realm, or could have his own realm somewhere else, and that is known as a vortex of absolute darkness.
And of course, I just want to point out that as we're discussing vortexes of darkness and we're discussing all these crazy characters that at a certain level of earth and matter are real, and at another level, they are not real at all. So they may be real with a small r, but they're not real with a capital R, so to speak. So I know that there's a text in the Nag Hammadi library, which is in the Gnostic tradition, called The Secret Book of John, which relates to the Apostle John, right?
Yes.
And I know that that particular book talks about a miscreation known as Ildabaoth. It's very strange. Ildabaoth, who called himself, quote, God. He was a miscreation by another being who created without the consort. And so we're not going to get into detail in this unless we do pick it up at another time. But just to tell you that a lot of fishy things going on, a lot of fishy characters running around the universe that we can either be afraid of or we can be or laugh at.
Right.
You know, I mean, because when you compare it with the I am presence, that's the supreme power that we have. And that particular power, the I am presence, which you remember from the top of the chart, can absolutely burn through or disintegrate every manifestation of evil that we're speaking of.
Right, because you're talking like even if there is these miscreations,
Yeah,
they're only temporary, even though temporary could be tens of or hundreds of millions
right.
of years.
That's right.
But time again is relative.
yep,
Time in the consciousness of a god would be very different than time in the consciousness of an archangel, an angel, or a man
Yes.
evolving on a
Yes.
particular planet.
yes,
So they're temporary, and you understand it as such that there are cycles for their existence, and when they're cut off from that supreme source, they can only last for so long.
yes.
And it just takes it's like a top. One time as I
Oh,
explained,
that's true. Yes,
you wind the string around
Yeah,
the top,
yeah.
you pull it. It will last on its own for so long,
yeah.
but after a while, it just starts to wobble, lose its momentum, and ultimately
get the
it
picture.
collapses.
Mm,
Right. So but that time
Yeah.
again could be very, very long.
Yep.
So that's where we are in this episode, ending with the idea of a vortex of darkness and certain miscreations. So I think we'll end here
Yeah, we'll end
for this
here. That's a
episode,
good
and
idea.
we'll pick up in our next episode of Lucifer and his lieutenants, and who could they be?
Interesting.
So, thank you again for
Thank you.
watching.
Thank you for watching.